March 9th, 1945, 11:30 p.m. Kenichi Tanaka looks up. The silver B-29s are not high in the stratosphere, they are screaming over his rooftop. Then, the sky doesn't explode. It splatters. Liquid fire rains down. He had been promised a Kamikaze divine window protect him. He never realized the Americans would bring a fire wind of their own. November 24th, 1944, 31,000 feet above Tokyo. The cold is a living thing. Inside the pressurized cabin of the B-29 Superfortress Tokyo Rose, Captain Robert Shorty Rankin feels the aluminum skin of his aircraft contracting with sharp, popping groans. The outside air temperature is a paralyzing -35 degrees. Through the thick cockpit glass, the sun is a brilliant, sterile disk in a dark purple sky. Below, a sea of clouds breaks, revealing the grey-brown sprawl of the world's largest city. "Target visible," crackles the voice of the bombardier, Lieutenant Abe Siemens from the nose compartment. Flak, moderate, no fighters yet. Rankin keeps his hands steady on the yoke. This is it. The first major high-altitude raid on the Japanese capital since Doolittle's pinprick 2 years ago. This is not a pinprick. This is the 21st Bomber Command. 111 B-29 seconds. Silver crosses, glinting in the thin sunlight, flying in a formation so high that Japanese fighters can barely reach them. On the ground, Kenichi Tanaka, a 19-year-old factory worker assigned to spotting duty, squints into the sky. The wail of the air raid siren had sent his co-workers scrambling for the crude shelters, but his job was to stay on the factory roof with binoculars. He'd heard the propaganda. He'd seen the woodblock prints in school. He knew the stories. His teachers had told him, with feverish certainty, that their islands were protected, that the Shinshu, the land of the gods, was inviolable. Then he sees them. They are not like the planes he's seen before. They are perfect, silver specks, leaving long white Banashikoki Gumo, airplane cloud-setched across the heavens. They are impossibly high, floating with a terrible silent grace. He feels a pit of cold dread in his stomach, but beneath it, something else. Curiosity. This is the enemy. The B-29, the demon machine. In the Tokyo Rose, Lieutenant Siemens is cursing. "Wind is! My God, the wind! I'm getting ground speed readings of 450 miles per hour. He is fighting an invisible monster, an atmospheric dragon no one had trained for, the jet stream. At this altitude, a river of wind is flowing at over 200 miles per hour, throwing his calculations into chaos. His Norden bomb sight, a marvel of mechanical computing, can't compensate. "Bombs away," he calls. The Tokyo Rose shudders as its payload is released. Far below, Kenichi watches tiny black dots detach from the silver crosses. He flinches, gripping the rooftop railing. He mouths a half-remembered prayer to the spirits at the Yasukuni shrine. The bombs scream down, but they don't hit the Nakajima aircraft engine plant, their target. The jet stream has scattered them like seeds. They detonate miles away, tearing through wooden homes in the Omori district, killing a few hundred civilians. It is a tragedy, but for the military, it is a failure. That night, Kenichi huddles around a crackling radio with his family. The announcer's voice is sharp, triumphant. "The cowardly American bombers, unable to face our brave Eagle fighters, dropped their bombs from an altitude of cowardice. Their wild bombing failed to damage our vital war industries. Our defenses are iron." The newspapers the next day echo the sentiment. The B-29 seconds are a technological failure. They are inaccurate. They are weak. Kenichi's father slaps him on the back. "You see? They cannot touch us. The Kamiyo, the divine ones, protect this land, just as they always have." Kenichi nods, the memory of the silver crosses fading, replaced by the warmth of the radio's bold claims. The Americans had come, and they had failed. The myth held. The B-29 was just a machine, and machines could be broken. They were nothing against a wind. Across the Pacific, in the Marianas Islands, a grim-faced general named Haywood Hansel reviews the strike photos. The mission was a failure. The target was untouched. He knows he is running out of time to prove that his high-altitude precision bombing strategy will work. And he doesn't know that his replacement, a cigar-chomping, ruthless tactician named Curtis LeMay, is already packing his bags. The wind Kenichi's father believed in was about to be challenged by a different kind of storm. January 20th, 1945. Headquarters, 21st Bomber Command, Guam. The air in the Quonset hut is thick with humidity and cigar smoke. Major General Curtis LeMay slams his fist on a map of Tokyo, the ash from his cigar scattering over the target plot. "I don't care about the goddamn wind," he growls, his voice like gravel. "I care about the Nakajima factory, which is still making kicker jets while we fly parades at 30,000 feet. LeMay had inherited a nightmare. He'd taken over from Hansel and, for 6 weeks, had tried to make the high-altitude strategy work. He'd pushed his crews, demanded tighter formations, and cursed the jet stream. It was useless. The B-29, the most advanced weapon in the world, was being defeated by weather. The superfortresses were burning fuel, parts, and men, all for a handful of bombs scattered across Tokyo's suburbs. Frostbite cases were overwhelming the infirmaries. Morale was cracking. His crews called the missions the Nakajima Follies. They'd fly for 14 hours, get shot at by flak, blown sideways by the wind, and return to Guam knowing they'd missed. Back in Tokyo, Kenichi Tanaka no longer bothers to go to the factory roof. The B-san raids are just part of the sky now. The sirens are a daily interruption, like the weather. He and his fellow workers have a routine. Hear the siren, walk calmly to the damp, poorly dug trench behind the factory, and wait. They listen to the distant, high-altitude thump-thump-thump of the flak guns, firing uselessly into the stratosphere. "The wind gods protect us," his foreman Mr. Ota says, cleaning his glasses. "The B-san are afraid to come down. They fear the eagles of our imperial army." Kenichi nods, but a creeping unease has settled in him. He'd seen a newspaper clipping showing an American bomber, a B-29, that had crash-landed in Manchuria. The sheer size of it. The 4 massive engines. These were not the tools of cowards. But still, they hadn't done anything. The factory was running. The city was functioning. The propaganda, it seemed, was true. The divine wind wasn't a physical storm. It was a spiritual shield. It was the Yamato Damashi, the Japanese spirit, that made the islands impossible to conquer. The Americans' technology was meaningless against their kokutai, their national soul. This was the exact logic LeMay was fighting. In his office, late on a humid February night, LeMay stares at a single reconnaissance photo. It's a close-up of the Shitamachi district. He's not looking at the factories. He's looking at the houses. Tiny, wooden, packed together like shavings in a box. He looks at the reports from the recent incendiary test drops. He thinks about the failed precision raids. Then, he thinks the unthinkable. What if the target isn't the factory? What if the target is the city? He's read the intelligence. Japanese war production isn't centralized like in Germany. It's diffuse. Thousands of tiny shadow factories exist inside civilian homes. Bolt cutters, rivets, radio components all being assembled on tatami mats by women and children, then shuttled to the big plants. To destroy the factory, you couldn't just hit the factory. You had to burn everything. He calls in his lead navigator. "What's the primary defense at night over Tokyo?" "Sir, well, searchlights. Some flak. Their night fighters are rudimentary, not well trained, not much radar. And at what altitude?" LeMay asks. "Are their flak guns least effective?" The navigator hesitates. "Well, they're sighted for our high-altitude raids. 30,000 feet. They're not expecting, well, anything else." "What about 5,000 feet?" LeMay asks. The navigator pales. "Sir, at 5,000 feet, they could hit us with a rifle. But they're heavy flak," LeMay insists. "Would it have time to refuse?" "No, sir. Probably not." LeMay nods, the idea solidifying. It is a gamble of terrifying proportions. He would take his multi-million-dollar bombers, strip them of their armor, their machine guns, and most of their gunnersall to save weight. He would load them with nothing but M69 incendiary clusters, tubes of jellied gasoline, and he would send them in low, single file, at night. His staff is horrified. "Sir, it's abandoning everything we were trained to do. The training is what's failing," LeMay barks. "We're going to burn them. We're going to create a firestorm. We're going to create a wind of our own." The crews are briefed on March 8th, 1945. When they hear the plan, there is silence. No guns, no formation, 5,000 to 7,000 feet. They are being sent naked into the heart of the enemy capital. They are a fleet of flying gas trucks. It feels less like a bombing run and more like a mass suicide pact. The lead pilot of the 314th Wing, Colonel Thomas Power, will fly the Pathfinder aircraft. His job is to go in first and draw a single, burning X on the center of the Shitamachi district, an X that will guide the 300 bombers following him. As they waddle down the runway at Saipan, overloaded with jellied fire, the crews are quiet. They are flying into the teeth of the dragon. They expect to be torn apart. They have no idea that, on the ground, one 9-year-old Kenichi Tanaka is just finishing his shift, annoyed that the factory has instituted a new nighttime work schedule. He is walking home, looking forward to a small bowl of rice. March 9th, 1945, 11:30 p.m. Shitamachi District, Tokyo. Kenichi Tanaka slides the thin wooden door of his home shut, the paper panels rattling. It is cold. His mother is boiling the last of their watery potato rations. The air raid siren begins its mournful, familiar wail. Kenichi sighs. Again, the Americans are wasting their fuel. His father, huddled in a blanket, nods. Let them. They fly like the crane, high and out of reach, and like the crane, they drop nothing of meaning. But tonight, the sound is wrong. It is not the high, faint drone they are used to. This is a new sound. A deep, guttural, vibrating roar that seems to come not from the sky but from the earth. It is the sound of a giant, approaching. The house itself begins to tremble. "Father," Kenichi whispers, his annoyance evaporating, replaced by a cold spike of adrenaline. That sound, it's low. He rips open the door. The sky is black, but the searchlights are frantic, sweeping wildly, catching nothing. Then, from the north, he sees it. A single, monstrous shadow, illuminated by its own landing lights, screaming over the rooftops. It is impossible. It is a B-29, flying so low he can see the gleam of moonlight on its glass nose. It's at 5,000 feet. A rifle could hit it. Before he can process this, the sky rips open, not with the whump of a high-explosive bomb, but with a series of dull pops. The Pathfinder, Tokyo Rose, a different ship, a grim homage, has marked the X. Behind it, a river of 300 more. Aboard the B-29 incendiary Inez, 20-year-old gunner Sergeant Ray Collins, his guns cold and empty per LeMay's order, grips his harness. He's staring down at the searchlights. The Japanese flak batteries, fused for 30,000 feet, begin to fire. The shells scream past the bombers and explode uselessly, 5 miles above them. The crews begin to laugh, a hysterical, giddy laughter of disbelief. It's working. Then, the bombs go. Kenichi sees it. They are not bombs. They are silver canisters, raining down like metallic seed pods. They hit the roof of his neighbor's house and burst. But they don't explode. They splatter. A second later, bright orange worms of jellied gasoline, the M69 Go Devils, are everywhere, skipping across the street, shooting 100-foot jets of liquid fire. They hit the dry, aged wood of his home. They splash through the paper shoji screens. The house doesn't just catch fire, it detonates. Within 90 seconds, Kenichi is standing in a hurricane of flames. The M69 seconds were designed for this moment. They were designed for this city. The shadow factories and the civilian homes are one and the same. Aboard incendiary Inez, the laughter has stopped. The air inside the cabin, 7,000 feet up, is thick with the smell of burning pine, roasted sewage, and something else. Something sweet and sickening. The smell of cooking meat. The fire is no longer 1,000 small blazes. The B-29 seconds have created a monster. The individual fires have merged, creating a single, colossal conflagration of firestorm. The superheated air rises at over 100 miles per hour, creating a thermal vortex that sucks in cold air from the edges of the city, feeding itself. This is the Kamikaze. But it is not divine. It is not protecting them. It is a wind of their enemies' making. The B-29 seconds are no longer flying in formation. They are being tossed like leaves by the thermal updrafts from the blaze, some thrown thousands of feet in an instant. The pilots are fighting for control. Kenichi is running. His mother is gone. His father is gone. He doesn't know where. The air is too hot to breathe. It is searing his lungs. The wind, the fire wind, is pulling him toward the inferno. He sees people trying to jump into the Sumida River, only for the water itself to be boiling. He sees the asphalt in the streets melting, trapping people where they stand. He looks up. The sky is no longer black. It is a brilliant, terrifying red, filled with the endless, roaring parade of B-san, silver bellies reflecting the world they are unmaking. Where are the eagles? Where are the fighters? Where are the gods? Kenichi screams, a sound lost in the roar. This is not war. This is Jigoku, the Buddhist hell. The woodblock prints were lies. The radio was a liar. The teachers were liars. The divine wind, the ancient protector of Japan, was a ghost. And the silver crosses in the sky, the ones they had laughed at, were the true gods now. March 10th, 1945. 7 a.m. The ruins of Shitamachi. The sky is a muddy brown. Ash, thick and greasy, falls like a warm snow. Kenichi Tanaka is alive, though he does not understand how. He is sitting on the warped steel girder of what was once a streetcar. He is naked from the waist up, his shirt burned from his body. His skin is blistered, his hair gone in patches. He looks out. There is nothing. It is not a city. It is a plain. A flat, black, smoking plain that stretches for 16 square miles. The horizon, once a jagged line of roofs and temples, is now an unbroken, level scar. There are no buildings, there are no trees, there are no landmarks. The firestorm had not just burned Tokyo, it had erased it. He stands, his movements stiff, mechanical. The silence is profound, broken only by the hiss of smouldering embers and the quiet, terrible sobbing of survivors who emerge from canals or rubble-filled ditches. They are shadows, moving through the soot. They don't speak. They just stare. Kenichi walks. He is trying to find his home, but there are no streets. The canals are choked with the dead, boiled black in the water. He sees shapes in the rubble. They look like charcoal logs, but they are fused together clusters of people who died seeking shelter in a ditch. He sees a bicycle, its metal frame melted and puddled on the ground. The fire had been over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Where was the Kamikaze? This is the only thought that circles in his numb mind. It's not a question of anger or betrayal yet. It is a profound, childlike confusion. The stories were so clear. In 1281, Kublai Khan's fleet, the greatest in the world, was dashed against the rocks by a divine typhoon. The gods, Hachiman and Raijin, had hurled the wind and lightning. It was the central fact of their history. The B-san, for all their silver armor, were just men. They were not a divine fleet. Why did the gods not stop them? Why did the wind not turn on them? He passes a neighborhood police box. It is just a concrete foundation. He sees a mother, her own back a mass of burns, carrying her dead infant, apologizing to it over and over. Gomen nasai, I'm sorry. This is the shock. The propaganda had not prepared them for this. It had prepared them for glorious death, for fighting with bamboo spears, for Gyokusai's shattered jewel, a noble suicide. It had not prepared them for this, pointless, anonymous, industrial-scale incineration. It had not prepared them for being vermin, gassed in their nests by an exterminator who never even touched the ground. The survivors are not talking about victory. They are not cursing the Americans. They are just whispering, Shikata ga nai. It cannot be helped. Back in Guam, the first B-29 seconds are landing as the sun comes up. The ground crews stand in stunned silence. The planes, once silver, are now a dull, carbon black from the belly to the tail, coated in the soot of the city they just cremated. The plexiglass is opaque with grime. When the bombardiers open the bay doors, a foul stench fills the tarmac, the smell of the fire, the smell of Tokyo, which has permeated the aircraft itself. General LeMay is waiting. His crews are in shock. They are not jubilant. They are quiet, hollow-eyed. "It was hell, General," one pilot mutters, his hands shaking so badly he can't light his cigarette. "It was a sea of fire. We set the whole damn world on fire." LeMay takes the initial reports. Over 300 aircraft, only 14 lost, most to the fire's own turbulence, not to enemy action. The reconnaissance planes, flying high above the smoke, are already developing their film. When LeMay sees the photos, he feels a cold, hard certainty. He places his cigar in an ashtray. The image shows a vast black smear where the heart of Japanese industry had been. The X was gone. The city was gone. His gamble had not just worked, it had been more devastatingly successful than even he had imagined. The Japanese defense had been, as he predicted, non-existent. Their night fighters were a joke. Their flak was useless. He turns to an aide. "Get me the target lists for Nagoya, Osaka, and Kobe." In Tokyo, the Imperial General Headquarters is in chaos. They cannot hide this. They cannot spin this. The Emperor's palace itself had been singed, the outer gardens burned. This was not a raid. It was an annihilation. The radio reports are frantic. They denounce the barbaric, demonic, cowardly attack on civilians. They call LeMay a butcher. But the language of invincibility is gone. The word kamikaze is conspicuously absent from the broadcasts. To mention the divine wind now would be a mockery. It would invite the one question they could not answer. Where was it? For Kenichi Tanaka, standing on the blackened plain that was once his world, the answer is simple. It's not there. It had never been there. The stories were just stories. The silver crosses, the B-san, they were the only real things. And he knew, with a certainty that chilled him more than the morning air, that they were coming back. March 11th, 1945, 28,000 feet over Nagoya. The crew of the incendiary Inez is back in the sky. This time, there is no nervous chatter, no fear, just a cold, exhausted professionalism. They had 48 hours on Guam, just enough time for the ground crews to scrape the soot off the wings, refuel, and reload the bays with 6-ton loads of M47 incendiaries. LeMay's order was simple. Tokyo was first. It is not the last. Below them, Nagoya, Japan's third-largest city, a hub for its aircraft industry, lays sleeping. The sirens are wailing, but the defenders are, again, useless. The pathfinders mark their X. The main force follows. In the blackened ruins of Tokyo, Kenichi Tanaka has found a working radio, a small wooden box crackling with static, salvaged by an old man from a cellar. He huddles with a small group of survivors, all of them wrapped in burlap sacks, their faces hollow. The announcer's voice is no longer triumphant. It is strained, cracking with an almost hysterical fervor. "Nagoya is burning!" The voice shrieks. The barbarians have attacked Nagoya. Their cowardly fire raids continue. But the spirit of the Yamato race is unbreakable. "We will." The old man, his face a mask of burns, spits. "They say that. Yesterday, they said that about us. Look." He waves a hand at the 16 square miles of desolation. This is unbreakable spirit. The attacks become a relentless, grinding drumbeat. Osaka, Kobe, Nagoya again. One by one, LeMay is crossing cities off a list, just as he had promised. The B-29 seconds, once rare, high-altitude ghosts, are now a daily, low-altitude plague. They are the new weather. They are the new reality. The Japanese propaganda machine, its primary pillar of divine invincibility shattered, scrambles to build a new one. They can no longer promise that the Kamikaze, the divine wind, will save the homeland. The B-san are proof that the gods are silent. So, They change the definition. Kenichi, now an orphan, is rounded up by an Imperial Army detail. He is no longer a factory worker. He is a volunteer in a citizens' brigade. His new job is to clear the dead. But first, they must listen to the local party official, a man in a crisp uniform standing on a pile of rubble. The divine wind has not abandoned us. The official shouts, his voice too loud. Do not be fooled by the lies in your own hearts. The Kamikaze is not a storm from the past. It is a storm in our blood. He points south, toward Okinawa. Right now, our sons, our brothers, they are the divine wind. They are the Tokotai. They are diving their planes into the American fleet, a typhoon of pure spirit. That is the true Kamikaze. It is a masterful, desperate pivot. The myth of passive divine protection is dead. It has been replaced by the myth of active, suicidal sacrifice. The gods will not save you. You must become a god by dying. Kenichi feels nothing. He has seen the silver plains. He has seen the fire. He has smelled the wind. The idea of a man in a plywood plane, a cherry blossom, being the answer to the 300 plane formations of flying fortresses is insane. It's like trying to stop a tidal wave with a teacup. The official drones on. You too must be ready. When the Americans land, you will meet them on the beaches, with bamboo spears, with kitchen knives. Each of you will take 10 of the enemy with you, 100 million shattered jewels. Ichioku Gyokusai. A cold, hard numbness settles over Kenichi. This is the new reality. The government has no way to stop the B-29 seconds. They have no air force. They have no anti-aircraft guns. They have nothing. So, they have decided that everyone must die. The divine wind hadn't just failed to show up. The term itself had been stolen by the government and twisted into a suicide pact. It was a lie to keep them safe. And now, it was a lie to get them killed. That night, the sirens wail again. It is not Tokyo this time, but the sound is close enough. The endless roar of the right cyclone engines, a sound that is now burned into his soul. He looks up at the red-tinged clouds. The Americans, he realizes, had truly brought a wind. Not a divine one, a clinical, industrial one. A wind of kerosene and aluminum that could not be reasoned with, could not be prayed to, and would not stop. July 12th, 1945. A burned-out culvert near Kawasaki. Summer has arrived, but there is no relief. The heat is not the familiar, humid warmth of a Japanese summer. It is a dry, choking heat, rising from endless acres of sun-baked rubble and ash. The air stinks of decay, of sanitation systems that no longer exist. Kenichi Tanaka, now 20 years old, has not slept in a real bed in 4 months. He is part of a small feral band of orphans and survivors who move between the skeletal remains of Tokyo, Kawasaki, and Yokohama. They are scavengers. They hunt for stray dogs, for unbroken water pipes, for anything the firestorms missed. The B-san is no longer a creature of the night. It has become brazen. The B-29 seconds now fly in broad daylight, in formations of 400 and 500, dropping their incendiaries with arrogant precision. The few Japanese fighters that rise to meet them are swatted from the sky by the swarm of P-51 Mustang escorts flying from Iwo Jima. The eagles are dead. Kenichi's group is huddled under a collapsed bridge, filtering river water through a dirty rag, when a new sound fills the air. It's not the roar of engines, but a high, thin whirring. "What is that?" whispers a young girl named Emi, her eyes wide with fear. Kenichi peers out. A single B-29, flying low and slow, passes directly overhead. But it is not dropping bombs. It is dropping paper. Thousands of white leaflets spiral down from the sky, drifting like a blizzard of cherry blossoms over the ruins. They land on the ash, in the canals, on the warped steel. Kenichi crawls out and picks one up. His hands are trembling. He can read. He taught himself from the factory manuals. The leaflet is written in clear, simple Japanese. To the Japanese people. Your military leaders have started a war they cannot win. America is not fighting you, the people, but the military clique which has enslaved you. Our powerful B-29 seconds will destroy their tools of war. S is greater than read this list of cities carefully. In the next few days, we will destroy some or all of them. We do not want to harm civilians. Evacuate these cities immediately. Below, there is a list of 12 cities. Kenichi drops the paper as if it has burned him. He looks at his companions. This is a new, colder terror. This is not war. This is a schedule. This is an appointment for extermination. The divine element was completely, finally, gone. The kamikaze of old was a surprise, a miracle from the gods. The B-29 was not a miracle. It was an engineer. It had a list, it had a map, and it was warning them. The government-controlled radio, of course, had a different interpretation. That evening they hear a broadcast from a portable radio. Another cowardly American trick, the announcer's voice strains. Do not believe their lies. They wish to create panic. They wish to disrupt our glorious war effort. To flee your post, your factory, your home, that is treason. Stay, stand firm. The Yamato Damashi will prevail. A hollow laugh escapes Kenichi's chapped lips. Stand firm? On what? He gestures to the horizon empty black plain. The leaflets have a devastating effect, more powerful than the bombs themselves. They shatter the last vestige of imperial propaganda. The government is telling them to stay and die. The Americans are telling them to leave and live. The B-29, the silver demon, is suddenly the only one telling the truth. The shock is absolute. There is no divine wind. There is no spiritual shield. There is not even a fight. There is only a list, and the endless, patient roar of the silver crosses in the sky, checking off names one by one. The military, however, refuses to see it. In their underground bunkers, the Supreme Council for the Direction of the War still speaks of Ketsugo, the decisive operation. They are still drafting patriotic citizens to meet the American invaders on the beaches with sharpened bamboo spears. They are still babbling about the 100 million shattered jewels. They are holding a meeting, discussing the precise spiritual requirements for mass suicide, when, on a bright August morning, a single B-29, the Enola Gay, opens its bomb bay doors over the untouched city of Hiroshima, August 6th, 1945. The devastated outskirts of Tokyo. The rumors that filter into the camp of survivors are different this time. They are not the familiar, grim reports of another city burned. They are whispers of impossibility, of madness. A survivor from a military convoy, his face pale and his eyes wide, tells a story that no one can grasp. Hiroshima, he says, his voice a dry rasp. It is gone, vaporized. Kenichi, thinner and harder than he's ever been, listens with a cold knot in his stomach. We are all gone, old man. Tokyo is gone. Nagoya is gone. No, the man insists, grabbing Kenichi's arm. You don't understand. It wasn't a fire. It wasn't 300 B-29. It was one plane. There was a light, a flash, like a small sun, and the city was erased. The people are shadows, burned into the stone. A profound silence falls over the group. A firestorm, for all its terror, was something they could understand. Fire is elemental. But this was mythology. This was the magic the priests had always claimed for their own gods. 3 days later, the other fist falls. Nagasaki. The radio broadcasts stop trying to explain it. The frantic propaganda, the calls for bamboo spears, the shrieking announcer all of it ceases. The airwaves are filled with a strange, hesitant static. For the first time in months, the sky above Japan is empty. The B-29 are gone. The roar of their engines has been replaced by a silence more terrifying than any bombing. Then, on August 15th, the soldiers come. They are not armed for battle. They are carrying a radio and a loudspeaker. They set it up in the middle of a flattened plaza. Everyone, an officer says, his voice hollow, his crisp uniform hanging loosely on his frame. Everyone must listen. At noon, His Imperial Majesty will address the nation. Kenichi stares. His Majesty? The Emperor? The Tenno? The living god? The direct descendant of the sun goddess Amaterasu? Was going to speak? To them? This was more shocking than the bomb. The Emperor was a presence, a symbol, a divine concept. He was not a voice. At noon, the survivors gather. They are filthy, starved, and broken. They stand, bowing their heads as instructed. A scratchy, high-pitched wail comes from the radio. It is the national anthem. Then, the static clears. A voice. High, formal, reedy. A voice speaking an archaic, courtly Japanese that Kenichi can barely understand. It is the Gyokuon Hoso, the dual voice broadcast. He struggles to follow the words. Endure the unendurable and suffer what is insufferable. The officer next to the radio begins to weep, his whole body shaking. The voice continues. The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage, while the general trends of the world have all turned against her interest. Moreover, the enemy has begun to use a new and most cruel bomb. Should we continue to fight, it would not only result in an ultimate collapse and obliteration of the Japanese nation, but also it would lead to the total extinction of human civilization. Kenichi's knees buckle. He understands. Not all the words, but the meaning. It is over. The divine, infallible God Emperor of Japan, the man whose ancestors had supposedly commanded the Kamikaze, was surrendering. He was surrendering to the B-san. He was admitting that the new and most cruel bomb was a force greater than the Japanese spirit, greater than the 100 million shattered jewels, greater than the divine wind. The myth that had sustained his nation for 1,000 years, the bedrock of his entire life, had just been officially, publicly, and divinely cancelled. The shock was absolute. There was no kamikaze. There was no spiritual shield. The priests were wrong. The teachers were wrong. The generals were wrong. The Americans, with their lists and their silver crosses and their new, terrible sun, had been right. As the Emperor's voice faded into static, Kenichi Tanaka looked up. The sky was blue. It was quiet. He felt no anger, no sadness, only a vast, cold, and hollow clarity. The gods had not abandoned them. They had just been irrelevant. They were old, powerless stories from a book. The B-san was the new reality. It was the wind and the fire. It was the judgment and the truth. It was the only God that had bothered to show up.